The red sky of Kepler 442 be burned like fire as the massive alien ship came down through the clouds. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the big window of the observation deck and watched the ship get bigger and bigger as it came closer to their small colony. The ship was huge, much bigger than any human ship he had ever seen. It was black and silver and had strange markings all over it that seemed to move and change as he looked at them. New Haven colony was not very big. Only about 3,000 people lived there, most of them miners who dug for rare metals in the deep caves under the red rock. The colony had been there for only 5 years, and most of the buildings were still new and shiny. But today, everything felt different because the Zephyrians were coming, and they were bringing something that made even the bravest soldiers nervous. They were bringing a Warbeast. Dad never seen a real Warbeast before, but he had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the stories. For 300 years, the Zephyrians had used these creatures to win every war they fought. The beasts were not really animals and not really machines, but something in between. They were tall as buildings and strong as spaceships, and they could think and plan like the smartest generals. But most scary of all, they only listened to the most powerful Zephyrian mind controllers, and when they fought, nothing could stop them. Lieutenant Amy Brooks stood next to Jake and watched the alien ship land with a loud noise that shook the ground. She was young and had only been in the Space Army for 2 years, but she was smart and brave. Her hand kept moving to touch the gun on her belt, even though she knew the gun would be useless against a Warbeast. "Captain, are you sure this is a good idea?" Amy asked. "Bringing that thing to our colony seems very dangerous. What if something goes wrong? What if it gets loose?" Jake nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing since the Zephyrian High Council sent their message 3 weeks ago. The message said they wanted to make peace with humans after so many years of small fights and arguments. They said they would send their best diplomats to talk about a new treaty. But then they said something that made Jake's blood run cold. They said they would bring a Warbeast to show their trust. "The Zephyrians say it's a sign of trust," Jake said. "They want to show us their most important weapon to prove they want peace. But I think they're trying to scare us before we even start talking." The alien ship finished landing with a big cloud of dust and steam. The landing platform, which was made of the strongest metal the humans had, seemed small under the weight of the huge ship. Slowly, a ramp came down from the ships. Belly and Jake could see movement in the dark opening. First came the Zephyrian diplomats. They were tall and thin with blue-gray skin that looked like it was made of small crystals. Their heads were bigger than human heads, and they had large black eyes that never seemed to blink. They wore long robes that changed color as they moved. And strange devices were attached to their heads that glowed with soft light. But Jake was not looking at the diplomats. He was looking at what came behind them. The Warbeast was the most beautiful and terrible thing Jake had ever seen. It stood 20 feet tall on 6 legs that moved like a giant cat's legs. Its body was covered in armor that seemed to be alive, changing from blue to green to silver as it moved. The armor was not just metal, but also had parts that looked like skin and parts that looked like crystal, all working together in a way that hurt Jake's head to think about. The creature's neck was long and snake-like, and its head was shaped like a triangle with many eyes of different sizes. Some eyes looked like human eyes, some looked like camera lenses, and some glowed with their own light. When the beast turned its head to look around the colony, Jake felt like it was seeing everything, not just with its eyes, but with other senses that humans did not have. Behind the Warbeast walked a Zephyrian who was different from the others. His name was Vexhaler, and he was the beast's handler. The crystal devices on his head were bigger and brighter than the other Zephyrians, and they pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to match the beast's breathing. Even from far away, Jake could see that controlling the Warbeast was hard work. Sweat that looked like liquid silver ran down Vexhaler's face, and his hands shook slightly as he concentrated on keeping his mental link with the creature. "How does he control something that big?" Amy whispered. "The Zephyrians have special brain powers," Jake explained. "They can put their thoughts into the beast's mind and make it obey. But it takes a lot of strength and they can't do it for very long without getting tired. As the group walked toward the main buildings of the colony, people came out to watch. Most of them stayed far away, but a few brave ones got closer to see the alien visitors. The Warbeast seemed to notice everything. Its many eyes moving constantly and its head turning to look at anything that moved. Then something strange happened. The Warbeast stopped walking and turned its head toward the part of the colony where the families lived. All of its eyes focused on something that the humans could not see, and a low sound came from its throat. The sound was deep and musical, like a giant bell ringing underwater, and it made the ground shake under their feet. Vexhaler's crystal devices flashed brighter as he tried to make the beast keep walking, but the creature would not move. It just stood there, looking toward the houses where the families lived, making that strange humming sound. "What's wrong with it?" Jake demanded through his translator device. Vexhaler's voice came back sounding strained and worried. "Unknown. Interference detected. The beast senses something unusual in your residential area. It is curious about something, but I cannot determine what." What the Warbeast was curious about was 8-year-old Ben Carter, who was supposed to be in school, but had snuck out to watch the aliens arrive. Ben was hiding behind a small building where the maintenance workers kept their tools, and he was staring at the Warbeast with wide eyes full of wonder instead of fear. Most adults looked at the Warbeast and saw a weapon, a thing made for war and destruction. But Ben looked at it and saw something different. He saw a creature that was alone and far from home, just like he sometimes felt when his family moved from planet to planet because of his father's job. He saw something that was beautiful and sad at the same time. The Warbeast's head turned a little more toward where Ben was hiding, and for just a moment, the boy felt like the creature was looking right at him through the wall. The feeling was warm and curious, not scary at all. Ben wanted to come out and get closer, but he knew his parents would be very angry if they found out he was not in school. As the group finally started moving again toward the meeting rooms, Ben followed from a distance, staying hidden behind buildings and equipment. He did not know why, but he felt like he needed to stay close to the beautiful, sad creature. Something inside him said that the Warbeast needed a friend. Even if no one else could see it, the peace talks were about to begin, but the real story was just starting with a curious boy and a lonely creature who would soon change everything for both humans and Zephyrians forever. 2 days had passed since the Zephyrians arrived at New Haven Colony, and the peace talks were going better than Captain Jake Morrison had hoped. The alien diplomats seemed genuinely interested in working with humans, and both sides were finding ways to solve old problems. But everything changed when Vexhaler collapsed. It happened during the morning patrol around the colony's outer fence. Vexhaler was walking with the Warbeast as he did every day, his crystal devices glowing steadily as he kept his mental connection with the massive creature. The beast moved slowly and carefully, its many eyes scanning the area but causing no trouble. Then suddenly Vexhaler stumbled and fell to his knees. The crystal devices on his head sparked and flashed wildly before going completely dark. The Zephyrian handler's face went pale, and silver sweat poured down his cheeks as he tried to stand up, but his body would not obey him. 2 days of constant mental contact with the Warbeast had burned out his brain's ability to control the creature. The moment Vexhaler lost consciousness, everything changed. The Warbeast's armor shifted from its usual blue-green color to deep red, like blood or fire. The creature stood perfectly still for a few seconds, as if it was trying to understand what had happened. Then it lifted its triangular head and made a sound that was completely different from the musical humming it had done before. The sound was harsh and angry, like metal being torn apart. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was the first to see what was happening. She was checking the security cameras from the command center when she saw Vexhaler fall and the beast's color change. Her training took over immediately. "Code Red! Code Red!" she shouted into her communicator. "The Warbeast is loose. All civilians to emergency shelters immediately." Jake Morrison was in the middle of a meeting with the Zephyrian diplomats when Amy's voice came through the speakers. He jumped up from his chair and ran to the window. What he saw made his heart stop. The Warbeast was moving toward the outer fence, and its armor was glowing brighter red with every step. The creature reached the fence and simply walked through it. The metal barrier, which was designed to stop vehicles and protect the colony from the planet's dangerous storms, crumpled like paper under the beast's massive claws. Alarms began screaming throughout the colony as automated systems detected the breach. "All security teams, maintain safe distance," Jake ordered through his communicator. "Do not attempt direct engagement." But some of the younger soldiers did not listen. A team of 6 security guards took position behind concrete barriers and opened fire with plasma rifles. The bright energy beams hit the Warbeast's armor and simply disappeared, absorbed by the strange living metal that covered its body. The creature turned toward the soldiers, and weapons emerged from its shoulders. 2 cannon-like devices rose up and began charging with crackling energy. "Fall back! Fall back!" Jake screamed, but it was too late. The Warbeast fired once, and the concrete barrier where the soldiers had been hiding simply vaporized. The men threw themselves to the ground just in time, but the heat from the blast burned their uniforms and left a crater 10 feet wide in the ground. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez was watching everything from the safety of the underground command bunker. She was the colony's expert on alien life forms, and her job was to study any strange creatures they found on Kepler 442b, but she had never seen anything like what was happening now. "It's not attacking randomly," she said to Jake through the communicator. "Look at the computer display. The beast has a pattern. It's searching for something." Jake looked at the tactical screen that showed the beast's movements. Lisa was right. The creature was not just destroying things for fun. It was moving in a specific direction, using its many eyes and sensors to scan everything around it. Every few minutes it would stop and turn its head, as if it was following a scent or signal that only it could detect. "Searching for what?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Lisa replied. "But whatever it wants, it's somewhere in the residential area." Meanwhile, the Zephyrian diplomats were in complete panic. Their leader, High Counselor Thanaris, stood in the meeting room with his hands shaking as he watched his people's ultimate weapon run wild through the human colony. "This has never happened before," Thanaris said through his translator. "Warbeasts have always obeyed their handlers. Even when a handler died, the creatures would simply stop moving until a new controller could be found." "Well, this one didn't get the message," Jake said grimly. "How do we stop it?" "You cannot stop it," Thanaris replied. "Without a handler, a Warbeast becomes pure instinct. It will search until it finds what it seeks. And if it does not find it ... What happens if it doesn't find it?" The alien diplomat's large black eyes looked even sadder than usual. "It will consume all organic matter in its search area. Plants, animals, people, everything. The hunger will grow until nothing is left." Jake felt his blood turn cold. There were 3,000 people in New Haven Colony, including hundreds of families with children. The emergency shelters could protect them for a while, but not forever. And if the Warbeast decided the entire colony was its search area, nowhere would be safe. The creature was getting closer to the residential domes. Its massive claws left deep scratches in the metal roads as it moved, and its red armor glowed brighter with each step. Emergency vehicles raced through the streets, evacuating families as quickly as possible. But the colony was not designed for this kind of emergency, and the evacuation was taking too long. Ben Carter was hiding in his family's apartment while his parents helped with the evacuation. His mother, Carol, and father, Mike, were both volunteers with the emergency response team, and they had told Ben to stay inside and wait for them to come back. But Ben could not stay away from the window. He watched as the great creature came closer and closer to his building. The boy was not afraid. He remembered the feeling he had gotten 2 days ago when the Warbeast first arrived, that warm, curious feeling that seemed to come from the creature itself. Even now, with its armor glowing red and its weapons charging, Ben felt like the beast was not really angry. It was just confused and lost, like a giant pet that could not find its way home. Outside, the Warbeast reached the edge of the residential area. It stopped and turned its triangular head from side to side, its many eyes focusing on the buildings where the families lived. The creature's sensors were working harder now, scanning through walls and floors as it searched for whatever had caught its attention 2 days ago. The beast was looking for Ben Carter, though neither of them understood why yet. Something about the boy's mind was different, something that called to the lonely creature like a beacon in the darkness. And soon that call would change everything for both of them and for the entire galaxy. The Warbeast reached Ben Carter's building and stopped in front of the main wall. Its red armor pulsed with inner light as it studied the structure with all of its many eyes. The creature lifted one massive claw and touched the wall gently, almost carefully. Then it began to cut. The claws moved through the reinforced metal like hot knives through butter. But the beast was not destroying everything in sight like everyone expected. Instead, it cut with surgical precision, making an opening just big enough for its huge body to fit through. The creature was being careful not to make the building collapse, as if it knew there were people inside who might get hurt. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez watched from the command bunker with growing amazement. "This is incredible," she whispered to Captain Jake Morrison through the communicator. "Look at how precise those cuts are. The beast is showing intelligence and restraint. It doesn't want to harm the residents." Jake stared at the video feed from the security cameras. "But why? 2 hours ago, it was ready to vaporize my security team." "I don't know," Lisa admitted, "but something has changed. It's not acting like a wild animal anymore. It's acting like it's looking for something very specific, and it knows exactly where to find it." Inside the building, Ben Carter pressed himself against his bedroom wall as the massive triangular head of the Warbeast pushed through the hole it had created. The creature's armor had changed color again, from angry red to a softer blue-green, the same color it had been when it first arrived. At the colony docked close, Ben could see that the beast's armor was not just metal and flesh like he had thought. It was much more complex than that. Tiny lights moved under the surface like stars, and parts of it seemed to breathe like living skin. The creature's many eyes were beautiful, some looking like jewels and others like deep pools of water. When they focused on him, Ben felt a strange tingling in his mind. The boy was not afraid. Instead of the terror that any normal person would feel, Ben experienced a wave of deep sadness that seemed to come from the creature itself. Through some connection he could not understand, he sensed the Warbeast's pain and confusion. The beast had been controlled and commanded for so long that it had forgotten what it felt like to make its own choices. "You're hurt," Ben whispered. Taking a small step forward, the Warbeast's head tilted to one side, and its sensor arrays retracted slightly. A low sound came from its throat, but this time it was not the harsh, angry noise from before. This sound was musical and soft, almost like a sad song. "Ben!" His mother, Carol Carter, burst into the room with a team of security guards behind her. "Get away from that thing right now." Carol was a small woman with brown hair and kind eyes, but right now her face was white with fear. She had been helping evacuate other families when she got the news that the Warbeast had broken into her building. Nothing in the universe could have stopped her from coming to save her son. The security guards raised their weapons, but Captain Morrison, who had followed them into the building, held up his hand. His military training told him that something extraordinary was happening, and his instincts said to watch and learn rather than act hastily. Ben held up his small hand toward his mother. "Mom, wait, please don't shoot. It's not trying to hurt anyone, it's just lost and confused." The 8-year-old boy looked at the massive creature with compassion instead of fear. "You don't want to fight anymore, do you?" he said softly. The Warbeast's huge head lowered until it was at the same level as Ben, one of its smaller arms, which was still bigger than a grown man's arm but more delicate than its main claws, reached out slowly toward the boy's extended hand. "Ben, no!" Carol screamed, but Ben did not pull away. He watched as the creature's claw, which could have crushed him like an insect, gently touched his palm. The moment their skin made contact, both boy and beast went completely still. Something incredible happened in that instant. Ben felt his mind connect with the Warbeast's consciousness in a way that was completely different from the forced control that the Zephyrians used. This was not about commanding or dominating. This was about understanding and sharing through Ben's young and open mind. The Warbeast experienced something it had never known before: genuine kindness without any desire to control or use it. For the first time in its long life, the creature felt what it was like to be valued for itself, not as a weapon or a tool, and through the Warbeast's ancient consciousness, Ben saw wonders beyond imagination. He saw distant stars and alien worlds, vast cities that floated in space, and creatures of every size and shape living together in harmony. But he also felt the deep loneliness of a being that had been created for war but yearned for peace and friendship. The connection lasted only a few seconds, but it changed both of them forever. When Ben and the creature separated, the beast's armor had turned to a warm golden color that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Its many eyes looked at the boy with what could only be described as affection. "Hello," Ben said simply. "My name is Ben. What's your name?" The creature made a series of musical sounds that seemed to echo and repeat like voices calling across a canyon. Ben smiled and nodded as if he understood perfectly. "Echo," he said. "Your name is Echo because your voice bounces back from far away places. I like that name." Carol Carter stared at her son in shock. "Ben, how did you know what it was saying?" "I didn't hear it with my ears, Mom," Ben explained. "I felt it in my mind. Echo was telling me about being alone for so long, and how the crystal people made him fight even when he didn't want to. But he doesn't want to be a weapon anymore. He wants to explore and learn things and make friends." Captain Morrison lowered his weapon and spoke into his communicator. "Command, this is Morrison. The situation has changed dramatically. The boy has made some kind of peaceful contact with the creature. I repeat, the creature is no longer hostile." Dr. Rodriguez's excited voice came back through the speaker. "The beast's bio readings have completely stabilized. All aggressive patterns have disappeared. Whatever just happened, it worked." Echo curled his massive body around Ben protectively, but gently like a giant cat. The boy reached up and patted the creature's neck, and Echo made happy humming sounds that vibrated through the floor. "Can he stay with me?" Ben asked hopefully. "I think he's been lonely for a very long time, and he needs a friend." Carol looked at her son sitting calmly next to a creature that had been terrorizing the entire colony just minutes before. Everything she knew about the universe told her this should be impossible, but she could see with her own eyes that her boy and the beast had formed some kind of bond. "We'll have to ask the captain," she said quietly. News of Ben Carter's connection with the Warbeast spread through the colony like wildfire. Within hours, scientists, diplomats, and military officers from both human and Zephyrian sides gathered to witness something that should have been impossible. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez set up her equipment in the community center where Ben sat comfortably next to Echo, who had curled his massive form into a protective circle around the boy. "The neural patterns are unlike anything we've ever recorded," Lisa explained to the assembled group. Her instruments showed readings that made no sense according to everything they knew about Warbeast biology. "Ben isn't controlling Echo the way Zephyrians do. There's no force or dominance involved. Instead, they seem to be sharing emotions and thoughts freely." High Counselor Thanaris studied the data with growing confusion. His tall frame bent over the human instruments as his large black eyes tried to understand what they were showing. "This contradicts 3 centuries of Warbeast research," he said through his translator device. "Our creatures respond only to direct neural commands backed by psychic force. They are weapons bred and trained for warfare. They cannot form emotional bonds." "Maybe that's the problem," Ben said quietly from his place next to Echo. The boy's small hand rested on the creature's golden armor, which pulsed gently with inner light. "Echo told me that he doesn't want to be a weapon anymore. He wants to explore new places and learn about different things and help people instead of hurting them." Ben had started calling the creature Echo because of the musical way its voice seemed to bounce back from distant places. The name felt right to both of them, and even the adults had begun using it. Dr. Rodriguez ran another scan with her bio-monitors. The creature's stress hormones have dropped to almost zero since making contact with Ben, All the aggressive conditioning that normally drives Warbeast behavior has simply disappeared. Captain Jake Morrison realized what this meant for the peace negotiations. If humans can naturally form these kinds of bonds with Warbeasts, while Zephyrians can only control them through force, it changes everything we thought we knew about these creatures. It means our entire understanding has been wrong, Thanaris admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of implications. We created them as living weapons, but perhaps they were meant to be something entirely different. Over the next few days, Ben spent most of his time with Echo, learning to understand the complex thoughts and feelings of the ancient creature. Through their mental connection, he discovered that Warbeasts were not just intelligent, but also creative and curious in ways that had been suppressed by centuries of military training. Echo showed Ben memories that went back to the very beginning of Warbeast creation on the Zephyrian homeworld. In those early days, the first Warbeasts had not been weapons at all. They had been companions and partners, designed to help explore dangerous planets and build settlements in hostile environments. The creatures had worked alongside Zephyrians as equals, using their great strength and intelligence to solve problems and create new homes among the stars. He remembers what his people used to be like. Ben told the scientists and diplomats who gathered each day to observe their interaction. The first Warbeasts worked with the Crystal People to build beautiful cities and explore new worlds. They were friends and partners, not weapons. The boy closed his eyes and concentrated on the connection with Echo. But then there was a big war with another alien race, and the Crystal People changed the Warbeasts to make them better fighters. They put control devices in their brains and taught them to obey orders instead of thinking for themselves. Echo's armor shifted through different colors as he shared his ancestral memories with Ben. The creature showed images of the genetic laboratories where his species had been transformed from explorers into weapons, and the training facilities, where young Warbeasts learned to suppress their natural curiosity and creativity. The saddest part, Ben continued, is that Echo remembers what it felt like before, when his ancestors were free to choose their own paths. He's been dreaming about that freedom for his whole life, but he never thought it was possible until he met me. This revelation sent shockwaves through the peace negotiations. If humans could naturally bond with Warbeasts, while Zephyrians could only control them through increasingly difficult mental domination, it suggested a fundamental compatibility that neither species had recognized before, but not everyone was happy with these developments. 3 days after Echo's transformation became widely known, long-range sensors detected a fleet of Zephyrian warships approaching the system. The ships were flying under the command of War Commander Kadover, a hardline military leader who viewed any threat to Zephyrian supremacy as an act of war. The War Commander demands immediate surrender of the corrupted Warbeast, announced the message that came from the approaching fleet. The creature and the human child who has infected it must be turned over for proper study and correction. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. High Counselor Thanaris was visibly distressed by his own military's response. Kadover represents the old thinking, he explained to Captain Morrison. He believes that control through force is the only way to maintain order. The idea that Warbeasts could be partners rather than weapons threatens everything he stands for. Jake Morrison felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on his shoulders. New Haven Colony had basic defensive systems, but they were no match for a full Zephyrian battle fleet. If he refused to surrender Ben and Echo, thousands of innocent colonists would die. But if he gave them up, he would be condemning a child and a gentle creature to a fate worse than death. The approaching crisis affected Echo deeply. Through his connection with Ben, the Warbeast sensed the fear and tension growing throughout the colony. His armor turned dark blue with worry, and he made soft, whimpering sounds that reminded Ben of a scared puppy, despite the creature's enormous size. Echo doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of him, Ben told his parents and the other adults. He says he would rather go back to being controlled than let innocent people suffer. But I can feel how much that would hurt him. It would break his heart to lose his freedom again. Carol Carter held her son close as they faced the approaching deadline. What do you think we should do, Ben? The Ear-old boy looked up at Echo's concerned face and then back at his mother. I think Echo and I need to find a way to help all the other warbeasts understand what freedom feels like. If they could all break free from the crystal peoples control at the same time, then War Commander Kadiver couldn't use them as weapons anymore. But how could you possibly reach other warbeasts from here? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Ben smiled and patted Echo's neck. Echo says all warbeasts are connected through something called quantum threads. It's like invisible strings that tie their minds together. If Echo can show them what he learned from me, maybe they'll want to be free too. The idea was incredible and dangerous. If it worked, it could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. If it failed, it might make War Commander Kadiver even more angry and determined to destroy them all. War Commander Kadiver's fleet arrived at Kepler 442b with weapons charged and battle formations ready. 20 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the small human colony like predators circling their prey. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything in the human fleet, bristling with plasma cannons and carrying its own warbeast in specially designed holding bays. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center watching the alien ships position themselves around New Haven. His hands were steady, but inside he felt the cold fear that came with knowing his small colony was completely outgunned. The defensive systems that protected them from storms and wild animals would last maybe 10 minutes against Zephyrian military technology. Colony Commander, came the harsh voice of War Commander Kadiver through the communication system. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender the corrupted warbeast and the human child who has infected it. If you refuse, we will take them by force, and your colony will be destroyed as an example to others who would dare interfere with Zephyrian military assets. Ben Carter sat next to Echo in the community center, feeling the creature's distress through their mental connection. Echo's armor had turned deep purple with worry, and his many eyes kept looking toward the sky where the enemy ships waited. The warbeast could sense his distant cousins in the ships above, and he felt their pain and confusion as they were forced to prepare for a battle they did not want to fight. They're scared too, Ben told Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, who was monitoring their connection with her instruments. The warbeasts up there don't want to hurt anyone, but they have to obey their controllers. Echo can feel how much they hate being weapons. Can Echo really reach them through this quantum connection you mentioned? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Ben closed his eyes and pressed his hand against Echo's neck. Through their bond, he could sense the invisible threads that connected all warbeasts across space and time. It was like a vast web of light that carried thoughts and feelings between creatures that had been separated by war and distance. He says it's possible, Ben replied. But it would be very dangerous. If Echo tries to share his freedom with the others, the Crystal people might try to stop him by hurting his mind. And if it doesn't work, War Commander Kadiver will be even more angry. High Counselor Thanaris entered the room with his diplomatic robes flowing behind him. The elderly Zephyrian looked tired and sad as he approached Ben and Echo. Young human, he said through his translator, I have spoken with my people aboard the fleet. Kadiver will not listen to reason. He believes that your bond with the warbeast is a disease that will spread to all our creatures if it is not stopped immediately. But it's not a disease, Ben protested. It's friendship. It's what the warbeasts were supposed to have all along before you changed them into weapons. Thanaris nodded slowly. I'm beginning to understand that. But Kadiver and his followers fear change more than they value truth. They would rather destroy both of you than admit they have been wrong for 3 centuries. Captain Morrison made his decision. We're not handing over a child and his friend to be tortured or killed. If Kadiver wants them, he'll have to come through us first. That's very brave, Thanaris said sadly. But your colony cannot survive against a full battle fleet, unless ... Unless what? Jake asked. The old diplomat looked at Ben and Echo. Unless the boy and the warbeast can do what they spoke of earlier. If they can truly free the other warbeasts from mental control, Kadiver's ships would become helpless. But the risk is enormous. Ben felt Echo's determination growing stronger through their connection. The creature had made his choice. He would rather die trying to free his people than live knowing they remained enslaved. Echo's armor shifted to bright gold as he prepared for the most important moment of his long life. "We have to try," Ben said simply. "Echo says his cousins have been waiting for freedom for so long. Even if we fail, at least they'll know that someone cared enough to try." The boy positioned himself more comfortably against Echo's side and placed both hands on the creature's warm armor. "Dr. Rodriguez, you might want to record this. If something goes wrong, at least people will know what we attempted." Echo began to hum, but this time the sound was different from anything he had made before. It was deeper and more complex, like a song that contained many voices singing in harmony. The sound seemed to come not just from his throat, but from his entire body as the quantum threads that connected him to his distant cousins began to vibrate with new energy. High above the colony, something unprecedented began to happen aboard HFY warships. The Warbeasts in their holding bays started to stir restlessly as Echo's call reached them through the invisible quantum web. The creature's handlers noticed the unusual behavior immediately. "Sir," reported one of HFY's subordinates, "our Warbeasts are showing signs of neural instability. Their control responses are becoming erratic." "Increase the psychic suppression fields," HFY ordered. "Do not let the corruption spread to our units." But Echo's message of freedom was stronger than the artificial controls. Through the quantum connection, each Warbeast experienced what Echo had felt when Ben first touched him: genuine kindness without the desire to dominate, friendship without conditions, and the possibility of choosing their own path for the first time in their lives. One by one, the Warbeasts in HFY's fleet began to break free from their mental restraints. The psychic devices that had controlled them for so long sparked and overloaded as the creatures reclaimed their own minds. On ship after ship, handlers collapsed as their neural links were severed by Warbeasts who refused to be weapons any longer. "Sir, we've lost control of all Warbeasts," came panicked reports from across the fleet. "They're not responding to commands." War Commander HFY felt his carefully planned attack crumbling around him. Without the Warbeasts, his ships were still powerful, but they had lost their primary advantage. More importantly, he was facing something he had never encountered before: Warbeasts that chose not to fight. The freed creatures did not attack their former handlers. Instead, they simply refused to participate in violence of any kind. Some curled up in their holding bays and would not move. Others made the same musical humming sounds that Echo was making, creating a symphony of liberation that echoed through the quantum web. Ben felt the moment when the last Warbeast broke free. Through Echo, he sensed the overwhelming joy of dozens of ancient minds suddenly remembering what it felt like to have choices. But he also felt their confusion and fear after centuries of being told what to do. "They're free," Ben whispered, "but they don't know what to do with freedom. They need help learning how to be themselves again." Dr. Rodriguez was staring at her instruments in amazement. The quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing across the entire fleet. Every Warbeast up there has achieved the same neural state as Echo. War Commander HFY's voice came through the communication system again, but this time he sounded uncertain rather than threatening. "What have you done to our creatures?" Captain Morrison smiled as he responded. "We gave them what they always deserved: the right to choose for themselves." What followed was the most remarkable diplomatic breakthrough in galactic history. With their primary weapons unwilling to fight, HFY's fleet had no choice but to negotiate. The freed Warbeasts became mediators in their own right, using their newfound voices to help humans and Zephyrians understand each other better. Ben became the galaxy's first Warbeast ambassador, working with children from both species to establish new bonds between humans, Zephyrians, and the newly liberated creatures. Echo and his cousins transformed from weapons of war into partners in exploration, using their incredible abilities to help both civilizations explore dangerous worlds and cosmic phenomena that neither could study alone. Years later, Ben would look back on that day as the moment when everything changed, not just for him and Echo, but for the understanding that intelligence and consciousness could take forms beyond imagination. The strongest bonds were not forged through control, but through simple compassion and the recognition that every thinking being deserved the right to choose their own destiny. The galaxy became a place where former enemies worked together as friends and where the greatest adventures were yet to be discovered.